Everyone, and welcome to today's video. This is a B1 level lesson, and we're going to be continuing our conversation about giving advice. So we're going to look at these statements, and after we read these, just think about whether you agree or disagree with each statement. My friends often come to me about very personal matters. They know I will listen and give good advice, and I never talk about their problems with other people. I'm a good listener, but I'm very careful not to give a lot of advice. If my friends have problems with other people, I choose my words carefully. Problems come and go, but people always remember what you said. And I'm a good friend, but honestly, I like my friends to sort out their own problems. I don't usually give any advice except get over it and move on. So just think about what you think about each of these statements. All right, so we sometimes offer advice even when no one asks for it. So have you ever had to deal with a friend or colleague who had bad breath? And, what advice might you give in that situation? Or a friend or a colleague that had bad body odor, or bad table manners, or someone who spoke rudely to you or someone else? Would you give advice in these situations or not? So we're going to talk about being tactful. So a tactful person has an ability to deal with difficult and sensitive issues in a skillful way. So here we have two different ways. We have the person with bad table manners and the person with bad body odor. And there's two different ways to deal with the issues. One is tactful and one is not. So we'll read these and decide which one do you think is the tactful way to deal with these issues. So the first one, Robert, listen, you have a really bad habit that needs to stop right now. Or, hey, Robert, I need to talk with you about something a little, well, delicate. Well, letter B is the more tactful way to handle that. And then, I can't believe that no one has spoken to you about this before, but anyway, I have to say something. John, I don't want to upset you, but I'd like to talk about something personal. So again, letter B is the one that is more tactful. Okay, so do you know anyone who has these habits? And what could you say? Somebody who always watches sports? Someone who's always grumpy in the morning? Someone who leaves dishes in the sink? And someone who's late for everything. So think about how you might address each of these issues in a tactful way. All right, so Stuart has a good friend, Mike, but Mike has a habit that annoys Stuart. So we're going to read this text and then answer the questions. You can pause the video and read on your own, or you can follow along as I read. My friend Mike is addicted to football. Football, football, that's all he ever talks about. If I see him at the beginning of the week, he talks about the games that were played the previous weekend. If I see him at the end of the week, he talks about the games that are coming up the following weekend. He just keeps going on and on about it, and I'm fed up. Is there any way to save our friendship? What do you think I should do? So first you can ask yourself, do you like sports? And do you know anyone who is addicted to sports? And what do you think it means to be fed up? He says, I'm fed up. Well, that's an expression that just means that you're tired of hearing about something. You just don't want to deal with it anymore. And so, what advice would you give Stuart? How would you suggest that he talk to Mike about this annoying habit? All right, so Scott has some advice for Stuart. So we're going to listen to Scott's advice and put them in order and then answer the questions.
Well, first I think you should show an interest in what your friend has to say. I don't think you should just sit there passively. Try to be an active listener and ask questions about what he's saying. Then, when you think he has talked enough about football, you should try to change the subject. Say something like, "You'll never guess what happened to me yesterday," to show him that you would like to talk about something else. If that doesn't work, don't continue to show an interest. In my opinion, you should cut the conversation short. If he doesn't get the message, the next step is to discuss the problem directly. But I don't think you should do this unless it's really necessary.
All right. So first he said, show an interest in what your friend has to say. Be an active listener. Try to change the subject. Don't continue to show an interest. And finally, if those don't work, discuss the problem directly. So do you think this is good advice? And would you give the same advice, or would you advise Stuart to do something different? All right, Karen is a colleague of Gary, so we're going to read about her problem and answer the questions. One of my colleagues, Gary, is always really grumpy in the morning. Every morning I walk into the office, smile, and say hello. I try to chat with him, but he just glares at me. After several cups of coffee, his mood starts to improve, but the first few hours of every day are a nightmare. I know everyone is different. Not everyone is a morning person, but does he have to be so grumpy? Is there anything I can do about this? So, what advice do you think you would give here? And what could Karen do or not do? And are you a morning person? And do you know anyone like Gary? All right, so what makes people grumpy? So many people don't sleep well or they don't sleep enough. Some people can't sleep, and that condition is called insomnia. Some people go to bed very late but have to get up early for work. And some people don't sleep well because of stress or other problems. So we're going to listen to Irene, and then according to her, what could be causing her the problem?
Well, there is a chance that he is suffering from insomnia, or perhaps having some personal problems.
Okay, so she mentioned insomnia and personal problems. So those are two things that she thinks might be causing Gary's problem. All right, so we're going to listen to Irene's advice for Karen and then take some notes while you're listening. And after listening, talk about the main points that Irene makes.
Well, there is a chance that he is suffering from insomnia, or perhaps having some personal problems. But I think you've probably hit the nail on the head. Not everyone is a morning person, and I don't think you should take it personally. Don't let his grumpy behavior get you down. Accept that your colleague is not at his best first thing in the morning and leave him alone. You should keep smiling and saying hello, but I don't think you should try to have a chat with him until later in the morning. People who are grumpy in the morning often just want to be left alone, so you should give him some space. I'm sure he will appreciate it.
All right, so some of the main points that Irene makes is that maybe he's just not a morning person. Maybe she's right in that he has insomnia, um, but she really shouldn't take it personally and, probably shouldn't try to change him. Maybe just leave him alone until later in the morning, and then she can start to have a chat with him when he starts to feel better. All right, and then we'll listen to the full message and then answer these questions.
Well, there is a chance that he is suffering from insomnia, or perhaps having some personal problems. But I think you've probably hit the nail on the head. Not everyone is a morning person, and I don't think you should take it personally. Don't let his grumpy behavior get you down. Accept that your colleague is not at his best first thing in the morning and leave him alone. You should keep smiling and saying hello, but I don't think you should try to have a chat with him until later in the morning. People who are grumpy in the morning often just want to be left alone, so you should give him some space. I'm sure he will appreciate it.
All right, so what does Irene mean when she says you've probably hit the nail on the head? Is an expression that just means you're right, you're correct about your idea. And what's she referring to? Well, she's referring to the idea that Gary probably just isn't a morning person. And according to Irene, what does Karen need to accept? Just that Gary is going to be grumpy in the morning, that's just how he is, and she shouldn't take it personally. And when should Karen talk to Gary? Well, later in the morning when he starts to feel better. All right, so complete Irene's sentences with should or the imperative. So go ahead and try these and match the beginning of the sentence with the end of the sentence, and then you can restart when you're ready to check your answers. All right, so I don't think you should take it personally. Don't let his grumpy behavior get you down. Accept that your colleague is not at his best first thing in the morning. You should keep smiling and saying hello. And I don't think that you should try to have a chat with him until later in the morning, and you should give him some space. All right, now we're going to read about Gianluca's roommate Joel and then answer the questions. I'm having some problems with my roommate Joel. We get along really well and have a lot in common, but there is one thing about him that drives me up the wall. He never washes the dishes. Every time I go into the kitchen, there's a pile of dirty dishes in the sink. I don't cook very often, but even if I only want to make a cup of coffee, I have to wash the mug first. What should I do? So, what do you think drive someone up a wall means? Well, this is an expression that means the person has done something annoying or irritating. It's something that you find annoying or irritating. And do you have a similar expression, or how would you express that idea in your native language? All right, so we're going to take a quick look at some ways to give advice. Using expressions with should is very common. I think he should speak to her about this issue privately. I don't think Jane should stay friends with Amy. I'm not sure you should worry about this. And you can also use the imperative when giving advice. However, the way you use the imperative can change its meaning. Don't speak to him about it now. Wait until later. Ask him nicely to think about his behavior. All right, so now we're going to give Jamie some advice. Jamie loves his job and he always gets along well with his boss Adele. However, Adele often changes her mind and makes 180-degree turns. Jamie gets very frustrated working with Adele. For example, Jamie recently worked on a project for 6 weeks. This morning, Adele came into the office and said, "Jamie, we're not going to continue with that project. I don't want you to do it anymore." So, what advice would you give Jamie? All right, now choose a problem and come up with some advice for each of these people. Ezekiel failed an important exam. He needs to pass the exam to get a better job. He didn't study much before the exam. He spends a lot of his free time watching TV shows, and he can take the exam again next month. So if you choose this one, go ahead and write some advice for him. Or you can choose B. Fatima feels lonely. She works with you, but you don't see each other outside of work. She says she spends her weekends at home. Her colleagues like her, but she doesn't seem to have any hobbies or play any sports. So if you choose this one, go ahead and try to give her some advice about how to deal with feeling lonely. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Please like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.